Hello, I'm Joelyn Rolston, and I'm sitting down today with three of my friends to discuss menopause. We're all black women in our early 30s who don't know an awful lot about the subject, so we're just getting together to have an open and honest conversation, asking ourselves important questions like when does it happen, when does it start, and what are some of the common symptoms?
So, hi guys. So, let's talk about the menopause, what we know about it, what we think about it, and any questions that we have. Then we want to kick off.
I don't mind going first. I feel like I don't know a lot about it apart from what people have told me. Like, considering it's something major that happens to a woman, I've never, of my own accord, gone and looked up anything, researched anything. It's all been like secondhand information of like my mum complaining about hot flushes and stuff, and like tidbits of information. I don't know what the menopause really entails, all the symptoms, how long it lasts for, when it really happens. Um,
I just don't understand why that is. I think you've raised a valid point that it is a big part of being a woman, and yeah, generally speaking, it's not really on our radar. Maybe there is comms out there that's targeted towards maybe the over 45s, over 50s. However, it's something that we will experience. So why is it not communicated earlier? We're all in our 30s now. Is that not something that should be on our radar? All I hear about is secondhand information from mum's friends and things about hot flashes. I think hot flash is the only thing I really know, to be fair.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would like to know more information, and if there's anything that I can do as a 30-year-old to prepare myself for that, maybe health wise, if there's a way I can live my life now that would put me in a better position for when it comes later, you know.
I agree. I feel like, oh gosh, yeah, I agree. I feel that until you get to a certain age, you're not really educated about menopause. And like Natalie said, we only hear about it like, through our parents or, their friends and the symptoms of hot flushes. And I do think that is a conversation that we should be having earlier on before we do actually hit that menopause stage. I've heard like premature menopause, and I know that with that, it can be run in a family. So as a result, if it does run in a family, you would need to get yourself tested just to find out whether there's a chance that you will actually end up getting premature menopause. But the only reason I knew about that was from reading an article that was in a magazine. It wasn't something that I went out of my way to research.
I didn't even know all that. I feel like I haven't really engaged with it at all because everything I've heard about it makes it sound so scary. And seeing what my mum goes through, like we call it hot flushes, but when I look at her, she's like, it feels like a dragon is breathing on me. It actually sounds terrifying. So I'm just trying to just pretend that it doesn't exist for as long as possible. But what you're saying is right. I feel like we need to know if there are things that we can do as women in our 30s now to kind of like negate some of the worst symptoms or see if we can like prevent things.
One of my mum's friends, she really suffers bad from this hot flush, and I think that's when I think of menopause, I always think of her. And it will just be a random outbreak, and I can see her physically melting. And then she always tells me, those fans you get on holiday, like those little pop-up ones, she had every single bag, every single, I don't know, crevice in her house, she has one of these fans because she doesn't know when she just needs to grab it and start cooling herself down. Like she'll literally open the fridge and push herself in there. It's a lot.
So I don't want that. And I also feel like, I think it sounds like the symptoms that you have when you have your periods, but for longer periods of time. So like the mood swings and the headaches and things like that. But is that true? I don't know.
It's not forever, is it? As in, once you get it, does it go?
No, I think it's
it's meant to stop. You're meant to go through menopause, so you're like premenopausal, menopausal, and it should end in your period ending.
And do you have periods when you're going through menopause?
They can just be like infrequent. I know from like my mum, like every like 3 or 4 months, she does have a period, but she is going through menopause.
Oh,
All right, so it's like the come down, and
calm down.
it kind of is, like the period becomes less frequent. You go through all the hormonal changes, and then you stop, and then you're just a woman. Just
A lot of people think that you can't like get pregnant when you're premenopausal or menopausal, but you actually still can. You're still releasing eggs.
See, I didn't know that. I thought that once you started experiencing menopause symptoms, that you wouldn't be able to get pregnant.
Not necessarily. You can still release eggs.
That's wild. I didn't know that either.
There'll be less.
And I'm guessing the chance of you carrying full term is just unlikely.
Yeah, because you're like beyond a geriatric pregnancy, probably.
Hey, miracles can happen.
That's a technical term. Once you're over 35, you're a geriatric mother.
Stop.
Mm.
There's just so much to think about that. I just feel like, yeah, these are conversations that we have with our mums and their mates, but outside of that, is anyone really engaging in it like that?
No.
And if I'm honest, it makes me quite anxious. Like, even this discussion, it just makes me quite like, I just feel like I've come to terms with dealing with for 2 weeks a month that I'm a dragon and then I bleed. And then now I've got to think about menopause. I just got on the routine with periods, Like, we know now, we know our bodies, when everyone starts irritating you, that, Aunt Flo's about to appear. And then now I need to prepare myself for a whole another stage.
I think what's scary as well is that the older we get, the closer we get to menopause, and you don't really think about it until having a discussion like this has just made me realize, the older that we get, the closer that we are to menopause.
And will it be sad, like, not to have a period anymore, as much as it's a pain in the arse? Will it be like...
girl, I can go.
Yeah, I mean,
I
do not need that.
I would not miss that.
Yeah, but it's just like I've had my period since I was 12. So, like, there'll be a day when I just don't have it. Like,
Think of the money you'll save on all the sanitary products.
Valid point. Or will I still feel the same, like, as a person, like, emotionally, like, how is that going to affect me, and like hormones and stuff, like what will that do? Like, will I still produce like enough estrogen? Will I start producing more testosterone? Because I've heard that's something that can happen during menopause. Will I grow a beard? Like,
so true. That is so true. I do think that it might lead to be feeling like a different kind of woman, because I know like some of my aunties now, they feel like, and my mum is very much on this wave of, I don't answer to anyone now that I'm going through menopause. Like, I am a different woman. Nobody call me, don't find out where I am, cook your own food type situation.
yes.
So, do you think that's what we will be like? We will be like going through this different phase of life, very much our own independent woman type vibe?
Maybe.
I'm just looking forward to not having cramps.
But you might still have them, though. Is that a symptom or not? Who knows?
This is the thing.
I thought that
go ahead.
You don't get any of that.
See, this is the thing. There's such a big question mark, and for something such a big part of our lives, why are we not informed? And then, Jo, you said about your mum acting like in a particular way. Think about if you or the people around her were more informed in terms of what she was going through and the changes that are happening. You can naturally adapt when you understand where someone's coming from.
Yeah.
So think about, if you were in a house with a husband and you got 4 male children, they're definitely not going to understand, because if we don't understand now, they're definitely not going to understand. And then there's no empathy, and that would just cause so many other adverse effects with relationships. Like, maybe causes of marital breakdowns or relationship breakdowns could be because of menopause. You just don't know. But it's just,
because it might be affecting your mental health.
Yeah, why is there not more information?
Then saying that, how
it definitely does affect mental health, though.
Because your period affects mental health. I do feel like I go crazy for a week.
Because like your body has become so used to being a certain way for so long, and then all of a sudden it's changing, and while you know that that's just a part of life, it's still a big change, and it's something that you're not used to. And then on top of that, it's because we're not educated about it enough, or maybe at all, people around us aren't able to empathize. Because I know that's how it was with my mum, like when she was going through it, like it was winter and it was cold outside, and she's telling us to open windows, and we're just like, why do you have to open the windows for? And she was saying that she's hot. And I was just thinking, but why are we opening the windows for? It's not even hot. And that even though like she was menopause, and we just didn't have that kind of empathy because we just didn't understand.
Women's health in general, though, like it highlights how like unimportant it is. Like surely you should, when you do biology and all of these health and social cares and whatnot, you should learn about these basic things. But none of these things are highlighted, and it's shocking that we're like 4 educated women in our 30s and we know barely anything about our own bodies. It's actually embarrassing. Like, what's gone wrong here?
I think it's also one of those things where it's just like when you think of menopause, the only thing that first few things that comes into your mind is when your periods stop and hot flushes. When the reality is, I'm guessing, is that there definitely is a lot more to it than that. And it's like you said, Nay, we're not educated. They're not telling us about it. It's like when we have biology lessons in school, they don't go into detail about it. But then when you think about it, I'm not sure about you guys, my biology teachers were guys.
Yeah. Same.
That's true. Also, I just feel like culturally there are things that we don't really speak about as Black women. I feel like this is definitely one of those things.
I agree.
Imagine a forum like this where you would have this kind of conversation.
I think our generation is like the first one to kind of break the barriers of what you discuss with your parents. I know for me, my mum says the openness she had with me, she never had with her own mother. So like for us, when we have our children, we all have to kind of do better than the last generation, just like they did better than the previous. You know, I'm sure like my mum wasn't told about some of the things that I was well informed about. So now I'd need to learn about menopause so that if I have a daughter, I can speak to her about it. It's like we have
And
that
your
mentality
son.
of like, huh?
And your son.
True. So he can understand women. Like, it's very much keep everything to yourself. Like, it's a private matter to do with your body. It's personal. But how do you have understanding for that if you're not able to talk about it?
That's true. So then do you think when you're going through it, you'll be the kind of person to be like, this is what I'm going through and this is what I'm experiencing?
To be fair, I think my mum does do it, but I'm not going to lie. She's whinging so much, I probably switch off. I'm just being honest. Like, I probably could ask her questions. I have such an open relationship with her, but where she's just moaning, I'm just like, oh, she's going through menopause.
Well, when you say the whole secrecy thing, do you think that there's an element of maybe discomfort? Like, you know, when you're going through a change, you might not want to be so open and so vocal about it. Maybe the start of menopause represents changes that aren't so welcomed in that particular woman's life. Like we don't know, we can't really empathize in that sense. But if I think back to starting my period, I wasn't very vocal about it. It wasn't an exciting time for me. It was just like, oh my goodness, like, and very secretly hiding a sanitary towel in my bag at school and things like that. And then it only got to a point where there were more girls who had started, and then it was more like, okay, yeah, like, oh, you, and then it was like a club. So why isn't it more, well, as in menopause, why isn't it more spoken about? Maybe something similar situation, you know?
That's true.
Nobody wants to be the first one.
I think women are always meant to be perfect. Like, there's like a type of perfection that's put on us where we need to like maintain an image of calm and everything's going great regardless of what's going on. And if you're like sweating and having other issues going with it and hormone issues, that doesn't match with being like a well put together female. That's not what to conduct yourself in a certain way. Like, keep that private.
And as women, nobody wants to be old. That's like a stigma. Nobody wants to be aging old. Think about how many anti-aging products there are there in the market targeted at women. And maybe I think menopause is associated with, you're now old. You're not a young lady, you're not a woman, you're not, middle age, you're now going to be classified as old. So that stigma as well, I think, is a reason why it's not really discussed.
I think you feel it with every decade. I feel like before 30 was like 30, and then 40 and 50, and what comes with it is like, it's kind of like, as a woman, you're not of childbirthing age, so you're like used goods now. You're on the downturn.
Used goods.
Like, that's it. You're over there. And the closer you get to those ages is like the less sexually attractive society deems you.
Yeah, that's true. And the less that you can offer to society as well. And I think maybe that's what people see menopause as being. Like, it kind of, I feel like people see it as like stripping your worth.
But it's what you're taught, isn't it? Like, your function as a woman is to procreate. One of the first questions you're asked is, do you want children? Like, are you married? Blah, blah, blah. So when your do you want children option is strapped off you, if that's what we're on this planet for, then what value do we have after we can't do that anymore?
Would you say that there's an onus on society in various forms to kind of to change that stereotype and change the narrative and improve communication and improve the education? Because as much as we're speaking, we started at the beginning of this saying that we don't really know, so we're just kind of going with the flow and going with the motions, but that could be corrected.
That's true. Definitely.
I agree. I feel like it's definitely something that should be taught in schools so that we're aware of it from a young age, so that we know what's eventually going to happen to our bodies. The same way we have sex education, they talk about the reproductive system, they talk about periods, it's the same way they should talk about menopause. All of those things are information that we need to know.
It's definitely been identified, and this is just one of many things, with sex education. From what we've been taught, that's going to change now in terms of what our kids will get taught. The LGBT plus community, that's a whole big thing that was never taught before. That's going to be on the agenda. Black history, more than Martin Luther King, maybe a Rosa Parks if you're lucky, but there's so much more to learn, and that will happen. The changes are going to come. So yeah, I think this is something that can go with that.
Things concerning your body need to stop being taboo. You can learn about your body without having to divulge your own personal details or it being inappropriate. Learning about your body shouldn't be inappropriate. Speaking about these things shouldn't be inappropriate. As long as you're using the correct terminology and you're doing it in the right place with an appropriate person. I feel like certain topics or bringing up certain things can feel like you're not being very ladylike.
Yeah.
And personally, I always like to contradict that. If I'm in a group with all females in a setting where, we're not, out in public where everyone can hear you, then you should be able to speak openly about anything.
That's true. And this is something that affects all women. It will happen at different stages in your life and at different ages, but literally every woman is going to go through this.
I agree. And I feel like I was remembering an episode of Sex and the City, and Samantha was going through menopause, and she was like sweating, and she was really hot. And it's like that conversation, it was had, but I feel like it was had in a jokey way, if that makes sense, because Sex and the City is a comedy. So it's like, even though they were talking about it, I felt like, thinking back now, it wasn't something that was taken seriously.
That's true.
The way they will take other topics seriously.
Yeah, they just associated it with her because she was the older character. So it was something
Exactly
that,
that.
fling into the storyline. Yeah.
And they did make a joke of it, which is fine, it's like, I'm sure there are some aspects of it which are funny, but in the same breath, that's a program for women of all ages, targeted to women, and there was no educational value to the way that topic was handled. So you didn't gain anything from her going through menopause. You probably, what she was experiencing was what we already know: sweating.
That's true.
And
If you wanted to find out more, where would you go? Other than the Googles, do you know where you could even find out more insight, especially women of colour? Where could we go to find out what's going to happen to us? And,
It's weird because in this country, like, I remember a friend I have from America, she's gone to a gynecologist since she was like of age to have a period, like every 6 months. She has a checkup and she finds it wild. Like, I only go now I get a smear, or if you actually have a reason. Like, I wasn't brought up that, every 6 months I went to a gynecologist.
Yeah.
Like, within our country, that's not normal, and it probably needs to be.
I agree. In America, it is very normal to be going to a gynecologist. It is very normal, but with us, like you said, unless you are getting a smear test, or even just like the only time you really will see a gynecologist for most women, I would say, I'm not going to speak for everyone, is if it's for a sexual transmitted issue. You're not really going to go to a gynecologist for a regular checkup. Oh, this is just my 6-month checkup. And it's because it's something that hasn't been introduced to us in this country, but it definitely is something that needs to be normalized the way it is in America.
Yeah, that's true. I think also maybe just asking our mums more questions, because then we have more of an insight into what we might experience when we go through it as well. But I mean, it is, like you said, it is, you just switch off after a while when they're like, it feels like they're banging on about it. And I'm not being funny, they're not selling it. So I'm like, why do I care about this?
They're not trying to. They're not trying to.
Well, they've raised us, to be prepared for life. Where was this part? How to get a job, how to save your money,
True.
Go through the change.
But with like my period or sex or stuff, I'm not gonna lie, my mum gave me very need to know information. It's not like, it was never ever a detailed approach. It was just like, here's some tampons, here's some pads.
How did you feel about that?
Respect yourself. I would just I just think, looking back, I needed more. And I just, now I'm older, she's happy to have any conversation with me, but I know everything at this point. I needed that 15 years ago. I've figured it out by now. Like, where were you before? You were too uncomfortable before, and now you want to chat to me like we're friends.
It's true. It's a very good point, though.
I think that with me as well, what I want to know, and I feel like what would be more informative is if we can just know, okay, what are the actual symptoms of menopause? Because our understanding is like, your period stops and you get the hot flushes, but there definitely are a lot more symptoms, and it's something that we should know, so that way we're aware of it when it's happening. Because I feel that probably with our mums, they were experiencing early symptoms and they probably didn't even know. So I do think it's something that we need to know, apart from the stereotypical menopause symptoms. We need to know more to it than that.